Welcome to What Healthy Couples Know That You Don't, a podcast dedicated to helping you create the relationship you truly want.
Unlocking empathy, one path to richer relationships. Empathy is the ability to understand and share the feelings of others, acting as a cornerstone for meaningful relationships. It allows individuals to connect on a deeper emotional level, facilitating better communication, which we all know is really important, and mutual respect. By stepping into another person's shoes, we gain insight into their experiences, thoughts, and emotions. Yet we seem to be losing our ability to have empathy for others, getting lost in being self-absorbed and scrolling. Last night we were at dinner and there were two people on their phones the entire time, including their food came and they were eating holding their phone. I was astonished. My therapist said many years ago, restaurants are made for people to have conversation before the food comes. And I think we're losing our ability to communicate and be interested in each other. Empathy is valuable to those of us who want to help the people we love feel understood without judgment or rejection, which creates a sense of safety. Safety matters because it encourages more vulnerability and openness. And if you've been listening to other podcasts, you know how important vulnerability and openness is. This enables deeper bonds. When empathy thrives, connections can happen more easily because there is more room for the differences, more space. Partners are open to supporting each other on their individual journeys. Love sometimes makes the mistake in believing that clones or someone just like me is the true source of happiness. Having empathy can improve conflict resolution because it encourages you to view disagreements from the other person's point of view. It's so easy to be entrenched in defending only your own viewpoint. When both people feel heard, there's more possibility for actual problem solving. When there is empathy, you are more likely to be able to respond instead of react. Having empathy means you are more likely to have a growth mindset because you are open to learning new things about yourself and from your partner. Research in 2010 by Kramer and Jowett confirmed individuals who are empathetic tend to have greater relationship satisfaction, which is what we're all here for, folks. Helping us to explore empathy today is Dr. D. Yvonne Young. He is a globally recognized authority in human behavior, leadership, psychology, and emotional mastery, renowned for helping high achievers transform complexity into clarity. His credentials reflect elite professional achievement and also a science-backed, evidence-based approach that produces lasting change. He holds both the ICF Master Certified Coach and EMCC Global Master Practitioner. In addition to his coaching and consulting work, Dr. Young is the best-selling author of Another Chance, as well as the expanded edition of Break Up, Don't Break Down in fall of 2025. And his current book, out last month, is Leading from the Heart. So glad you could be with us today. Thanks for coming.
Thank you, Rhoda. I appreciate you taking the time and allowing me to share your platform.
Thank you. Just to make sure we're all on the same page, would you please talk about the 3 types of empathy, which is not something I was really familiar with, and how it determines success in leadership and relationships and mental health?
Okay. First, I want to touch something before we do that.
Okay.
And that is, why is it important? And then I'll get in into the weeds about that, because often when we talk about emotional and cognitive empathy, and and these things that really help us um, to just be better at being a human being, then we have to think about, if we understand what empathy even is, and many of us don't. Empathy is always present when we are invested for the right reasons with, whether it's a family member, significant other, colleague, or just a stranger in the moment. And what I mean by this is empathy basically gets associated with a character trait or behavior, when in fact empathy is a cognitive skill. So one of the three types is cognitive empathy, right? It's the empathy that you use by intent, rationally, using from the prefrontal cortex, and being very mindful about how you are going to engage another person, right? And then there's this emotional empathy, where I like to say that it's a more basic instinct in human beings, and many animals, especially mammals, where there are these mirror neurons kicking in, and we're seeing the other person as self. A good example of this is if you've ever lost anyone close to you, a parent, God forbid, a child or a spouse. When someone else loses someone that has that same descriptor,
Mm-hmm.
our mirror neurons quickly kick in a line. And then there's just compassionate empathy, when we realize that I can't change your circumstances, and I want to, so I can't. But in this moment, I intend for my presence to make a difference in how you're experiencing what you're going through. So, cognitive, emotional, and compassionate empathy are different routes to get to the same end result. Last thing is that what that same end result, so I can really get people to see this. Empathy is different than sympathy. Sympathy is when you look and go, "Oh, you poor thing." Yeah, and even though you might mean well, it's condescending in some ways. In other ways, it's detached. I'm not going to say that sympathy is not authentic, but I can say that it's probably not that useful, because it's just a default in behavior. But when we look at empathy, empathy is like seeing someone in the water drowning, struggling to swim, being swept away by a current. And you make the decision to get wet. You make the decision to go into the water, not drown, not be sucked by the current, but I'm going to meet you where you are, and I'm going to stand in what you're standing in alongside you. And I will be there to help us figure a way back to safety.
That is really interesting. I've always thought pity is a least appreciated emotion in my book because it really lacks respect. And you're saying that sympathy can be tinged with a lack of respect as well.
Hmm.
And I hadn't
Yes.
thought of that. Yeah. That's so interesting. How are the skills being lost to the algorithm life that are the
Yeah.
same skills that they determine success in relationships, leadership, and mental health?
Well, algorithmic life is, this is where we are right now.
Yeah.
We live in a world where data is the primary component for determining interaction when we start talking about social media. By default, if we look at the architecture for digital awareness, if we want to call it that, we want to call it AI, it's basically another version of how humans categorize information and how we try to regurgitate what we've categorized back to the environment. So what these algorithms are doing, they're looking at what you liked, they're looking at the comments you made, they're looking at how long you stayed on the page. And what's going on is they are building an ecosystem around engagement with the individual or with the user. Specifically, now we're talking about you, and I don't mean Rhoda, I mean you, the viewer right now or listener. That's dangerous because that's when empathy becomes weaponized. Give you a good example. If you look at Instagram or you look at TikTok, even LinkedIn and Facebook, you're going to notice something. And even with your telephone, you're going to notice this with Google. You looked at a shoe, you're looking for shoes on your phone. All of a sudden, you start getting all this stuff about shoes,
Yep.
right? Well, it's more intense than that on these social media networks. They look at what you consumed, then they send you something like it, right? Or they send you something that's adjacent to it. So you may not have looked at. I'm going to just make up something. You may not have looked at porcelain dolls, but you looked at toys. So now you start seeing content about toys, but for whatever reason, porcelain dolls are featured in all the toys. And you go, well, I looked at the toys. Why do these doggone dolls keep coming up, right? Well, that algorithm is just baiting you to see, okay, is this another way we're going to engage you? And after a while, the dolls will be replaced with stuffed animals or something. But that's just an example. But here's the science that's happening. The science is they're making that dopamine hit. We have a dopamine hit when we achieve something, right? So if I'm looking at content and I'm a very human-centered personality. So things that go against that, things that are sexist, things that are racist, things that divide people, I am totally opposed to those frameworks, be they political or professional or personal. And so they'll send something to make me go, what the hell? So now I get to type in my comment or my thumbs down or whatever. Well, the algorithm is titillating me by giving me something to go against. But the bottom line is it doesn't want me to change the channel. It wants me to stay on and be engaged. Well, within three minutes, maybe 3 seconds, 30 seconds, I'm a big meditation, prayer, let's come together as a human race type person. So now I'm going to get some old picture of some sage-like character, an old black woman, and some Gandhi-ish man, a Martin Luther King sounding guy, some grandfatherly white guy, whatever. I'm going to get some content like that, which is going to make me go, and because it makes me feel seen, and I'm seeing something that makes me, okay, I want to listen to this. I'm going to, I'm not going to switch. I'm not going to go do my work. I'm going to look at this whole video because of the way it's the direction from which it comes, right? And then there's this thing where I get something that's kind of in the middle, and it's a commercial. And it's a commercial about something that has to do with something I'm pursuing. So now here's how to get X number of sales for your new book. Here's how to create content that resonates with your viewer. So they have this. Some of you are too young to know what a lazy Susan is.
I know.
But for those of you that don't know, because Rhoda and I have got a little seasoning on us, but for those of you that don't know, it's a little plate that has some ball bearings and a stable base. So you can just kind of turn it, like a revolving door for you want ketchup or do you want salt and pepper? And if the salt and pepper is on the opposite end, you can rotate the pepper to you, right? Or the ketchup or whatever. So what they're doing is they're getting this smorgasbord or this lazy Susan to just keep giving you a little bit, just enough to where you won't take your attention away because they know your attention span is about 30 seconds. So they've curated that. Now, that algorithmic stuff is limbic hijacking you. And here's the problem. When it's good content, it enriches you, it enlightens you. But like I said, only a third of it is. We have a part of our brain, the middle part of the brain, and we have some structures there. We have the pituitary gland that determines what hormones go where. We've got this thing called the amygdala, and that's a part of your brain shaped like an almond that does a very unique thing. It encodes impressions, memories, situations, but it attaches a neurochemical signature to it, almost like we could say a barcode or a QR code. And then we have this thing called the limbic system, which is a group of structures in the brain. Well, all of that architecture in your brain does one thing: keeps you alive, keeps you alert, keeps you safe. Now, here's the problem. That part of your brain is primal. What I mean by that is it's responding to cues in the environment. The part of your brain that is collaborative, creative, able to be inspired or inspirational, the part of your brain that is omniscient, that's on the front. That's the dorsolateral prefrontal cortex, the prefrontal cortex, right? The insula. So when the middle brain is on, this is typically off. Now, the problem with that is simple. When your primal brain is alerted, you are reacting, you're not being proactive. The other part is you're not being collaborative because you're in a survival state. Well, that means that you're not engaging other than at a surface level. Because when we had limbic hijacking earlier in the existence of mankind, it was in the middle of the night, and we're like, what the hell is that? Or something in the bushes, what's that, right? And it kept us safe because we knew, grab the spear, start running, take the fire with you, whatever. Well, now we're triggered by the name on a text message, who it's from and what it says. We're triggered by an email. We're triggered by an envelope in a mailbox that went from yellow to pink. And worse, we're triggered by trauma, a thought we're thinking or what have you. So when these things are happening, we're not happening. And that's the state most of us are walking around in, though latent and not evident, but very much so present, and it's disrupting how we connect.
Yes, that's right. And another danger is, according to your book, is false belonging. Could you talk about that?
I'm going to use the weaponized side of empathy, if I may. When these algorithms make us feel that we're part of something. We're being othered. I'm a black man. I'm a rural white farmer. I'm a woman of a certain age, or I'm a single parent. Now all of a sudden we have this sense of belonging to this group that's been marginalized in some way or othered in some way. And we attach that to identity, when in fact, we may identify with it, but that does not mean it's part of our identity. And we don't separate that other than with intent. And most of us don't even know that's how we're functioning. So how in the hell are we going to separate it? And misery loves
Company.
what? Yes, yes. So when I say, well, I'm a single man that I'm successful, so all women want me for is my money. Yeah, bro, me too. Hey, and we got this bromance, and it's built around this dysfunctional construct. And I'm going to adopt that as identity because now belong. One of Maslow's needs is the
Yeah,
need to
that's
belong,
right.
right? So I feel like I belong to something. And the truth is I'm being exploited.
Yeah, I agree. I do. The gap between the haves and the have nots is getting larger almost by the moment, not just by the day, every year. How can privilege get in the way of empathy? I thought that was such an important point. I am stunned when I read somebody like Elon Musk has not given to charity, or somebody
Hmm.
else runs a charity foundation and they don't give any money to the charity like they were
Yeah,
supposed to.
yeah.
So that really interested me.
Well, I'm going to go and take this really down deep. Who would think that a person who is a person of color, who chose a different lifestyle preference, gender identity, whatever, would vote against the Civil Rights Act? Well, Clarence Thomas
Hmm.
did it. Why? Well, from the outside looking in, self loathing must play some
I
part.
wondered about that. Yeah.
Yeah, there's a part where you're going, how are you, a person of color, voting against something that keeps you from being excluded and gives you a voice? Now, what the hell is wrong with you, right? Another thing is, so when we start looking at that, the other thing is, what is the connection? Where does this privilege break us off? Well, in several places. I don't understand how you're suffering, and because I've never suffered in that way, I don't even see that as a problem, though I may sympathize with the fact you have that problem. Hey, no, I think it's bad to have people not have insurance. But if you paid your premium, you'd have insurance. Well, that's true. But when the insurance company is put mildly pimping us or extorting us, and we're paying an unregulated escalation, a rate for less services, do you understand that? Well, how can you if you could easily write a check for whatever they charge? But for the person that goes to the grocery store, and I used to fill the basket with fruits, vegetables, meat, you know, bread, and I fill my basket, and at the checkout stand is $75. Now that same basket half full is $150, right? So the abandonment comes in when privilege gives you a blind spot and you're willfully ignorant, or you have unconscious stupidity, one of the two. But here's another misgiving. I remember in undergrad, when I was at U of H in pre-med, there was something I read in one of my social psychology courses. And the people who are the least empathetic are the people who suffer the same plight. Give you an example. A woman that's a senior executive and a single mother. She is more than likely to not empathize with a single mother that says, I need some time off. I need to leave early. My child is in a play at school and I need to be there because, daddy's deceased or daddy's estranged or whatever. And that other individual says, well, I'm a mother too. And if I can be here, so can you. Whoa, whoa, lady, what? And again, that's another form of privilege where the blind spot is coming in a place that you think there'd be a whole lot of foresight.
Yeah. I also believe that for me, reading has really helped, even when it's fiction. I worked with women in prison and jail for years in the early days. And I just read Chain Gang All Stars, one of my favorite new books. It's just wonderful. And I got to see the author speak. And it was so it was so profoundly connected to what it is like to be frozen in your mistakes prison and how they were exploited, because it's about how women and men in prison have to fight like gladiators in Roman days, and whoever slaughters 5 people and wins 5 battles is going to get set free. And it was astounding to me, as someone who worked in prisons, how that person captured the reality of so many parts of it. It was incredible to me. And I just think we don't seem to read enough either. And it's such an important part of having empathy and imagination about other people's situations. Would you agree?
Yes, I not only do I agree, if I may, Rhoda, I'd like to even
Sure,
expand on that.
absolutely.
Earlier in the conversation, I was talking about being amygdala hijacked, limbic hijacked, and people walking around traumatized in fight or flight to the point that it's been normalized. In many cultures, especially Western culture, even Japan, working yourself to death is normalized. And those that don't do it, those that try to have a work life balance, well, you're disrupting the continuity of our growth and our expansion. Well, no, actually, you're limiting it by not having work life balance. But the truth is, whether someone's imprisoned physically or mentally, because you can be in prison and be walking around free as a bird and still be incarcerated mentally and emotionally. What's happened is a couple of things. We get stuck and we ruminate. We ruminate over and over, predicated on how deep the trauma goes, right? I did a lecture earlier this week, and in that lecture, I was talking about how some of the things that we do um, that are really meant to help us survive. These prophecies that we keep setting in motion based on fear. We're ruminating on a failure that we made. Well, the brain is real smart. When that happens, our brains really have this unique ability to look at something that was tumultuous for us and to come back and say, well, here's what happened. Here's why your brain uh, is considering these outcomes, and really, it's helping you to try to learn from whatever trauma you had.
Yes.
But when we get hooked by this trauma, all of a sudden, what we start doing is ruminating, like, well, I should have done this. I could have done that. Uh, now look at the implications of me not doing better and I'm suffering. Well, the brain is really smart. So whatever you train it to do, it will do it faster the next time you do it. An example is if I tell anybody to do something in repetition, if you can't do nothing but burn water in the kitchen, and I teach you how to cook one thing well, you're going to cook it faster. You're not going to be intimidated because you're going to habituate to it. Well, that's the brain. That's the brain adapting to repetition, right? And with that repetition, we now can amplify our ability to make something happen even faster. Well, that's what's going on when we get hooked with self-loathing, with anxiety and depression. The brain has mastered going to that place faster. And your would have, could have, should have goes from being a positive, okay, let me learn from this. What were the other alternatives? To damn, now I'm just focusing on what I could have done, and here's the alternative outcome I could have had. And that's neurochemical. That is an elevation in cortisol. That's an elevation in norepinephrine, or epinephrine, another term, adrenaline. That's a proliferation in dopamine, because what is dopamine? It's a reward. It's a transmitter that says, hey, I learned, I achieved something. That's how you get hooked playing Candy Crush and whatever that Magic Kingdom or whatever that is, I play all the time. But it's giving you this little reward. But the problem is you're being rewarded for something negative. And the more you practice this, the better you get at it. Now, here's the problem. This gets worse when the guy next to you is dealing with the same thing. Well, what happens when everybody that's proximal to you in that little unit you're locked up in, if you're incarcerated physically, is walking around ruminating with the shoulda, couldas? At that point, you want to get rid of the anger. So how do you do it? You externalize it. And by externalizing it, you find someone else that's you can say, well, it's your fault that this is like this. It's your fault, white guy, that I don't have a job and I'm black. Okay, well, it's your fault, black guy, that I don't have a job because they gave you my job and I'm white. Well, the truth is, you don't have a job because your ass is lazy and didn't want to go back to school. You don't have a job because you didn't want to update your skill set, and you're trying to do something that nobody uses a typewriter anymore. So there are things that we have to accept when we see the evidence that the cycle that we're in is not yielding the outcome we desire. As we become conscious of that, that's when we take control. That's when we look and say, okay, what is in my environment that's helping me stay stuck? What is going on internally with me cognitively that's helping me stay stuck? And what is it I'm consuming? And what you're saying is reading. Last part I'll say to your original comment is reading is a luxury because that means you have time to sit down and do it. But when you're in survival mode, the only thing you can think about is surviving. So the odds of you reading is distant until someone tells you the knowledge in that book is your answer.
That's true. Absolutely. So in your book, you talk about empathy has power in two ways. Could you tell us about that?
Yeah, that's what I was saying. It has the weaponized empathy, but one side is omniscient and the other side is obnoxious. The omniscient is going to look at what are the possibilities? What am I learning? Even though I hate my condition, I hate my circumstances, what is this pressure bringing forth from me that probably wouldn't be tapped had I not or am not going through or have gone through, what happened to me. I would not know the resilience or the self-efficacy that I possess, right? But the obnoxious self, the glass is always half full. It's always, well, if I just sacrifice more of me, he'll change. She'll change. Yeah, I'm sitting here with a black eye and a fat lip, but had I not said something, this wouldn't have happened. Well, what did you say? I told them that they're trifling, need to get out their butt and go get a job. Well, wasn't that true? Yeah, but I made them hit me. Well, what consequences did you create for them? Oh, none, because I don't want to get them in trouble, but you don't mind having a fat lip and a black eye, right? So there are things that we have to think about. Who am I going to allow to govern right now? Will it be the omniscient version of me? Glass is half full. What does this offer? And what can I change about the way I'm perceiving this that could change the way that I interact with it? The obnoxious self. This is, all I have is bad luck. Well, if it wasn't for this race, this woman, this man, I wouldn't be in this situation. When the truth is, I could get rid of the woman, the man, or the person that doesn't look like you. But if you don't change the way you look at things, the things you look at will never change.
That's true. There are 5 ways to handle conflict. Could you share with my audience a couple of them so we can all identify and learn more how to handle conflict?
Since I've been on tour, that's been evolving because there's more than 5 ways, but I'm going to give you the packaging of the 5 ways we handle it. And I'm going to give you the different lanes you can take with it. So the 5 ways you can handle conflict are: you can avoid it, you can accommodate it, right? You can compromise, you can collaborate, or you can compete. Again, you can compete, collaborate, compromise, accommodate, or avoid. Those are the 5. If you avoid conflict, do you ever address it? No. Yeah. So if you keep letting something go unchecked, it's probably just going to keep happening. The other one is, let's say you accommodate. You just say, you know what? I don't feel like going through it. We'll just do it your way. Okay. You probably need to do that sometimes, just like sometimes you need to avoid. You don't want to go to a birthday party and start a fight, But if you keep accommodating someone, you're teaching them how to mistreat you. Because at some point you should get back what you're giving. If you are always the one apologizing and you never get apologized to, if you're always the one giving in and the other person doesn't give in to you, you can't be mad at them because you're enabling someone. Then compete. Competing is necessary. You need to speak up for you. Because if you don't, do you really matter? And will you be heard, respected, valued, or seen? But if you're quick, when someone says something, you're like, ruff, you just pounce on it, right? Then the odds of someone telling you the truth get just smaller and smaller. And the abandonment rate of friends and people that love you will keep going up because you're not permeable to any information. And then collaboration sounds really good. Let's get together, let's do this. But collaboration is one of the more difficult of these 5 options because to collaborate effectively, you have to put yourself in the other person's shoes when you don't want to. You have to do that again after you reach an agreement. You must be willing to see the other person's side to the extent you see yours. And they need to do all of those things in return for you. So collaboration is a wonderful way to handle conflict, but it's done only with intent, awareness, and it has to be done from the heart, not transactionally, but transformationally. And then compromising. Compromise is good. Problem is, if that's your default strategy, nobody ever gets what they want. So when I say to you, well, you love steak, I love fish. You hate fish, I hate steak. Well, we compromise and say, we're going to eat wieners all the time, and we're going to eat tofu. Well, after a while, you're going to be sick and tired of tofu. So am I. You're going to be sick and tired of wieners, and so am I. Then I'm going to betray you and run off with one of my buddies who loves seafood. And you're going to betray me and run off to a steakhouse with one of your friends. And then when we get back around each other, you're going to be looking at me like, you smell just like fish. And I'm going to be looking at you like, yeah, I see your stomach's bloated and you smell just like smoke. See what I'm getting at? So compromising is something that you need to do sometimes, but not all the time.
Yeah, that's true. I agree with that. So we were talking about self-sabotage earlier. So how can we learn to have self-compassion without self-sabotage?
Well, the first thing is be permeable to this fact. Transformation requires disruption. I'm going to repeat that. Transformation requires disruption. I must make myself available to the idea that if I don't like business as usual, I can't continue to do business as usual. The other thing is self-acceptance. Marilyn Monroe made this statement years ago, before I was ever, I don't think I was even born yet when she said it, but she said, if you cannot accept me at my worst, you don't deserve me at my best. I think we need to do that with ourselves. When I work with a client from the clinical side, I'm also a nationally board certified health and wellness coach, which is the National Medical Examiner's credential stamp that says, okay, you're board certified in health and wellness medicine, and I mean coaching. I'm sorry. Well, let's stop and think about what does that mean. Well, in playing it out, patient comes, doc, I didn't go to the gym like I promised myself. All right, what does that mean? I only went one day out of the 5 I had said I was going to go. Well, instead of me going and saying, what the hell? How in the hell no. What I'm going to ask this guy is, well, okay, life happens. But on the day that you did go, what did you do? What happened the night before and the day of? Just that inquiry allows you to find, and they call this motivational interviewing and appreciative inquiry clinically. But I'm looking for, okay, what happened in your environment? What happened in your psychopathology? What happened emotionally? What happened physically? Who were you around? Who did you talk to? What was going on in your life? So we need to ask ourselves those questions and realize that some things that happen in our lives are beyond our control. Other things that happen in our lives, yeah, you did it, you screwed up. Hey, everybody makes mistakes. But when we come to these realizations or come to these conclusions, we need to empathize with ourselves. We need to give ourselves the compassion we give other people. And I'll be the first to say, I do this junk for a living. I write books. I mean, I got books, not able books, but I still struggle with self compassion and self empathy. I have to do this willfully and intentionally with myself. So, you, the person that's watching this right now, one of the reasons, and I'm not trying to be religious, but I'll say a higher power, God, divine intervention, your angels, whatever, has you looking at this right now is you're probably being unfair and too hard on yourself. Well, guess what? If you're treating you like that, guess how you're treating other people?
It's true. Absolutely. How does gratitude have a role in understanding empathy?
Gratitude is one of the most powerful reset buttons that we have to wake up in the morning and first realize, hey, I woke up. Because trust me, somebody didn't. To stand up, somebody else can't. To be able to speak to someone and have them understand you, that's a gift because some people have had a stroke. Or in my case, I had oral cancer that I was in Istanbul in the airport in Istanbul, Turkey. And, having retromolar cancer and a free fibula, that's where they took the bone from my leg and rebuilt my jaw and took the muscles from my jaw and rebuilt the inside of my mouth and all this. And that wasn't a user-friendly process, trust me. But when I saw this woman in Istanbul who had this side of her face gone, I quickly thought about, golly, man, that could have been me. Or when I think about somebody like people who are very close to me, my mentor Deborah, a guy like my little brother Noel, they were telling me, well, Noel got cancer when I got it. Deborah was, championing me and praying for me. Well, Noel is deceased and he died from cancer. And Deborah, I buried her last December. So the fact that the people who I dearly loved are gone, I'm still here. That's something. So where I'm going with this is if you focus your energy on anything, wherever you focus your attention, your energy, you amplify that. I focus my energy, and I suggest you do the same, on things that I typically take for granted. A roof over my head, being able to stand up. I don't care if you just lost a loved one, even a spouse or a child. What are you doing? What is that loss bringing forth in you? Bitterness and anger? Or is it bringing forth resilience and gratitude that I had my child for 12 years? I had my husband, I had my wife for 30 years. I had my husband, my wife, 6 months. Some people never had anybody. See what I'm getting at? Or the other side of it is, yeah, you screwed up, but how many times have you had another shot? And how many times have you been blessed? Yeah, you lost your job, but didn't you have a job? Weren't you looking for a job when you found that one and you were blessed to get that one? So could that happen again? So maybe we, instead of being mad we got fired, maybe we should be grateful that, just like I found this job, I'll find another one. And many of our greatest blessings are when God says no. Because no doesn't mean never, delayed doesn't mean denied, but there's probably something better coming your way, but you will never have it if you have a soured attitude and you can't appreciate where you are and that, you still have a tomorrow, because tomorrow is one hell of a gift.
You describe sustainable presence as the capacity to show up fully day after day without burning out, numbing out, or checking out. And for my last question, what are some practical tools we can use to make this happen in our own lives?
The first thing is the hint that's in the phrase presence. right? You can be present, as in I'm here, but what presence, right? What kind of presence do you have? Are you disconnected and stoic, or are you collaborative and friendly? Ask yourself, if I had to spend the afternoon with me, would that really be an enjoyable use of time? Because if you don't want to be alone with you, why in the hell would somebody else want to be alone with you? It is a good idea for us to be mindful that, we don't know what that one thing is that's going to shift the trajectory of your life. When I would meet with my public relations team, and I had some wonderful people, Adam, and I don't know which one booked me for your to be blessed to be on your show, but Adam, Marcus, in essence, I would always tell them, we don't know what that one, maybe 3 minutes, or that one show is that the right person just happened to tune in. And that very day, they were going to give up. Or that very moment, they were about to go slap the what out of somebody, or tell somebody something that probably they really deserved and they shut it down. Or maybe the blessings for me. Somebody heard this and like, you know what, I need to hire him. Or maybe the blessings for Rhoda, because we don't know, right? But how we are in terms of presence is the magic key that opens the door for all things good and all things possible. If we are mindfully aware that there is always this blessing, this transformational, life-changing moment waiting to enter your airspace, but the only way it can is if you get all of your negativity that shoots the blessing down. If you go and take that off status 5, which is full alert, to let me cut this off, because I don't know what miracle, I don't know what person, I don't know what situation, I don't know what set of circumstances is getting ready to come on the horizon. And it could just be something as simple as the pitch, tone, and inflection in your voice that opens that door. It could be something as simple as you just being kind to somebody, just telling the truth and saying, I'm sorry, or I apologize, or being vulnerable and saying, no, I don't have it together. Right now I'm struggling, and, I wish things were better, but I can't get nowhere if I don't try. Matter of fact, I miss every shot I don't take, right? Every shot I don't take, I miss it. Every game I don't play, I lose. And if you could remember that and attach that to presence, you will ensure some very good outcomes in your life.
Please tell us again the names of your book, particularly the newest, and your website, and anything else you want people to know.
Okay, so it's Dr. D. Yvonne Young, and people think Yvonne, Y-V, no, it's spelled just like Ivan. So it's Dr. D. Yvonne, spelled just like Ivan, I-V-A-N, Young. Make sure you put the D separate from Yvonne. It's not Devon, it's D. Yvonne Young. And if you go to anything, Google, Chat, Claude, Gemini, you can find me. The other thing, for as the books go, the newest book is called Leading from the Heart. Again, Leading from the Heart. Margaret Moore, the founder of the Institute of Coaching at Harvard, wrote the foreword. Kerry Abner, the head of credentialing at the International Coach Federation, also co-wrote the foreword. The book is evidence and research based, really good content. You can just go to anywhere, Barnes and Noble, Amazon, Target, whatever bookseller, but just leading from the heart. And if you just type that in, Simon Schuster has a page directing you to vendors and retail outlets that are convenient to you.
Now, your empathy is been increased and ready for action. Dive in, stir up some genuine connections, and let's see where this journey takes you. Don't forget to join us next time for more tips to keep your relationship game strong. It would mean a lot if you would take time to write a review and share the podcast with those you love. Thanks for listening.
Thank you for listening to What Healthy Couples Know That You Don't. If you have enjoyed the show, please leave a rating and review on iTunes and help get the word out. To learn more or connect with Rhoda, visit therapyideas.net.